Well, hey fans, welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Spoilers, and today we're talking spoilers for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So first off, we'd like to thank our sponsor for this video, Flip Frog Books. Flip Frog Books is a Black-owned book publisher based in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. They've released children's books such as The Bacon Tree, I Don't Want a Pet, and Ned's Fanciful Webs. If you wish to purchase a book, the link is in the description below. Jump into a good story with Flip Frog Books. So today for Let's Talk Spoilers, we have a packed panel, and let's just get into it. We have newcomer, longtime friend, avid gamer, food critic, and movie enthusiast Jordan Woods. Tell the people how you feeling.
How you doing, everybody? Feeling good, feeling great. Thanks for having me, Harrison.
Glad to have you. And back for his third spoiler talk, we got gamer, comic fan, and local historian. He's just a history teacher, Daniel Henry. How you doing?
Hello. Glad to be here again. Hope everyone's having a good day.
And also joining us, we have newcomer and fellow NCFCA member and WFMY News 2 photojournalist and film critic, Manning Franks. How are you, Manning?
Hello there. I'm glad I could make it on. Sorry about that, but I was only 20 minutes late. Pleasure to meet you all.
Well, let's just jump right into it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is here. It's a very emotional send-off for this iteration of the characters. Jordan, why don't you lead us off? Give us your quick overall thoughts on the film and give it a score.
Overall thoughts. Going into this, I had to make sure I had all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe timelines like kind of flowing in my head because, between Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 1 and 2, a lot of things have happened. So I kind of had to keep track of everything. This is my personal score. It's an 8.5 out of 10, only because I don't like crying. As far as emotions go and directing goes, it's a 9. It's definitely a tearjerker. I love the overall message. I'm going to stick with my 8.5 out of 10. That's what I'm going to do. I'm a 10 guy.
Sounds good. Daniel?
Overall thoughts, I thought it was a really good send-off for this version of the Guardians. I enjoyed what they did cinematically with a lot of the fighting scenes, especially how they rotated the camera. I thought that was really good. And they're a little into little drops of slow motion I thought was really good as well. Overall, I'd say for score-wise, I think 8 to 8.5. I think that's pretty good, yeah. Yeah, that's a solid score.
Manning?
I absolutely loved it. I don't know where I would rank it in comparison to other Guardians movies. It's like always fluctuating every single day. They all hit a different beat, but I feel like this was a beautiful love letter to the Guardians family because they are a team, but they're a family at the end of the day, a found family. And I think James Gunn shows how much he cares for these characters by the way that he treats them, by giving them all great send-offs, even if I feel like some of the subsidiary characters, some of the adjacent plots didn't all come together at the end of the day. We'll get to that later. But the emotion was there, the action was there, and overall it was a complete package that really sent our heroes off on a high note, and I really, really enjoyed it and loved it. And at WFMY News 2, what we do a score called 2 approved, a movie 2 avoid, and our middle one, which is a movie for you to decide. This one was 2 approved, so this was a high marks, thumbs up in my opinion. So
sounds good.
Think of it as a 4.5 for doing Letterboxd.
As a 4.5, and you can give whatever kind of score you want. Well, yeah, I really enjoyed it too. I think it is currently sitting at my second favorite post-Endgame movie, barely nudging out Wakanda Forever. It was enjoyable, very emotional. I gave it like an 8.9 out of 10 on my website. You can head over there and check out my full written review. But yeah, like you all said, very emotional, very enjoyable, great camera work. So, Jordan, now you've seen all 3 Guardian movies, correct?
Yes, I have.
All right, so how would you rank them? Volumes 1, 2, and 3?
3, 1, 2.
3, 1, 2. Very precise, very quick. Daniel?
1, 3, 2.
1, 3, 2. I would agree with Daniel on that. My ranking is 1, 3, 2. I think there's just some magic about the first one, being like that first kind of MCU movie that's set apart. It's not totally based on Earth, out in space. There are small connections with the inclusion of Thanos and the Power Stone. The second one I felt was just a little too jokey. there was still like some emotion to it, some heart. But yeah, I think everybody had a joke, and it just kind of wore down on me. But this third one is very good. I don't think it can quite recapture the magic of the first, but it definitely is a just well-made film and is very enjoyable. Manning, volume 1, 2, 3. What, put them in order.
They're all so close together and they will fluctuate. So if you ask me tomorrow, Harrison, it will change. But it is definitely, for now, 1, only because of nostalgia. I need to go watch that again. It's been a while. 2, no. 1, 3, 2. And that will change if you ask me in about an hour.
All right. Right now you're matching me and Daniel. The music in this one is probably my favorite of all the films, even though I do think it was a little too loud throughout the entire film. Those needle drops were way up there. Jordan, what do you think about the music?
I really enjoyed the music. I think they really on this one wanted to overemphasize the music personally, because there was literally music on almost every scene. That's just my opinion. They did right on the soundtracks. Like, if you want to listen to a good soundtrack to have some good nostalgia, Guardians of the Galaxy, they definitely take the cake.
Daniel, any thoughts on the music?
Yeah, I enjoyed the music. I think all the Guardians movies are basically like, best of classic rock. Like,
yeah,
for sure.
Top classic rock hits, like top 10 hits over like, the late 70s, 80s, and early 90s, I guess. That's pretty much what they all are. They just hit after hit after hit. I did enjoy it. I think Jordan's right. Like, I think the music was supposed to be like something they were trying to emphasize in the movie. I guess like its calming effect, because Rocket would play it like pretty loudly. And I was actually having trouble trying to figure out. I couldn't tell in the beginning if he was playing it over like the speaker system in Nowhere. It was like Nowhere, right?
Yeah, Nowhere.
Or if he was like had like headphones in, because I wasn't entirely sure. But I'm assuming he was playing it over the loudspeaker there.
Yeah, I think it was a little bit of both. I think the Zune connected to the loudspeaker on Nowhere and the ship. They also played it in the background for the audience to hear and in the headphones. Manning, what did you think about the music?
Yeah, no, use of the music, I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy has always been to me an excellent has probably been some of the best use of I guess pre-established music, however you want to call it, needle drops, as you will, that I have seen in any Marvel film since, like, I don't know. I'm trying to think of any other. No one else has really done it as iconically and as well as they have. And I think it was good. However, this was the first one where I felt like, in my opinion, in comparison to the other two, these didn't feel as earned or as story imperative as, just think of the beginning, the first few in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. You have Mr. Blue Sky, and how that one is kind of set into the sitting with the opening. That one works and sets the tone. Not saying that this one doesn't, but every other subsequent one doesn't feel as memorable as the prior two, until you get to the final one, which is The Dog Days Are Over, which I feel like is probably the second best needle drop in the entirety of Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. And I say that only because it was such a cathartic moment, and we'll get into the moments a bit later, but it was such a cathartic moment that I absolutely adored, to have our heroes have this moment of triumph, of celebration. And at the end of the day, that's what this family kind of deserved and needed. And I loved how Gunn incorporated that one, because I'm gonna be real, if it was set outside of the 70s and the 80s, we're really getting into some of the 90s and 2000s. I wasn't sure if it was going to work. Overall, I did think it worked really well, but I still feel like my favorite needle drops were overall more consistently in 1 and 2. But I think the last one is still how do I say this? A lot of roller coasters of my emotions for the needle drops in this one. But overall, I feel like it stuck the landing as they normally do, but with a special place in my heart for Florence and the Machine's The Dog Days Are Over at the very end.
Yes, it's good. I really like Crazy on You. That was really good when Adam Warlock showed up. So back to you, Jordan. These characters have been with us for years. The team has grown. Jordan, who is your favorite Guardians character and why?
All right, so I got to do this one a little bit differently, only because I love when movie sagas kind of wrap it all up, and I like to see how they always play back to when you first met them. So I'm not going to say I have a favorite. I'll say my biggest surprise character, since they're technically not a Guardian, but I really love Cosmo in this movie, the dog. because when you first got introduced to Cosmo, just a dog in a suit, it was like, all right, what is this? The collector has a dog. And this thing, the dog has a Russian translator and it's telekinetic. And I loved it so much. You take that back. I'm not a bad dog. I loved it. But I will say, just overall, I really love how they played back and let you actually get to remember how you met all of the Guardians. For instance, I had a little bit of knowledge about Drax the Destroyer before this. Comics wise, he literally was a destroyer. Like he was a monster. But you had to remember, he also did all of this because of his daughter, because he was a father. So he had that chance of redemption where he could speak their language. And he was like, you're scaring everyone. He really stole the last part of the show, last part of the movie to me. He stole the show to me. How he, showed who he really was and why he did it. Nebula, her growth within the Guardians of the Galaxy saga was great. She actually kind of started having a heart and sentiments. Of course, Star-Lord went from being super annoying to, he kind of had that Fat Thor moment where he's always alcoholic because he misses Gamora and everything. So, that was entertaining. Definitely want to talk about how Groot said more than I am Groot, and we just let that slide. They missed out on an opportunity to really just be like, wait, what? Because we all know with the PG-13 rating, you get to say one cuss word, and they chose their one time to say the F word. They should have used it when Groot said, I love you guys. I don't want to hear it. That was great. And we're all just like, oh, we're just going to let this slide? Like, come on. Of course, Rocket, his development. I really don't like how they just didn't really show how Rocket met Groot, but whatever. Like, fine. You got it. Cool. And then Mantis kind of came into her own as well. I really enjoyed how Mantis kind of, really stuck up for herself. And if you paid attention in the fight scenes, Mantis could handle her own. She was throwing some haymakers. She was really getting busy. Like, she also landed the worst. Like, every time they had to land in a comical way, she landed so awful. I think she might have bones made of rubber because I saw her neck broke like 5 times. So
yeah.
So
that
for
crunch.
me, that crunch, Jesus, every time. But for me, Cosmo stole the show. My favorite Guardian overall is Rocket. He's super smart, but also he's kind of has broken English. I kind of reflect with him because I'm country. So yeah, that's my overall rating of everyone. So Cosmo, she's a good dog.
Daniel, who's your favorite Guardian? Why?
Probably, I'm gonna say Star-Lord, Peter Quill. You can't say he's the main character. At least, I mean, he, I guess, is the leader of the Guardians. If they have a leader, I guess that's really more a leader by committee in most cases. But I always just think back to, like, one reason why I really liked it is obviously if you go back to the soundtrack, like it starts off with him just kind of like robbing a tomb, and he's just kind of jamming out, and probably a place where he should be a little bit more on guard. And I think that just kind of encapsulates them as a whole. It's like situations where they should be taking things very seriously. Some of them are not as serious as they need to be, or as focused as they need to be. It's still, they found a way to work it out. And so I think he just kind of encapsulates all of them. And then also kind of like how they, throughout the movies, they've always kind of, he has a different understanding of the world or like of the universe coming from Earth than some of the other ones. I mean, even though he's been there out in the ether of space for his entire life, he was still kind of like, well, he was like, what, 8 years old, 8 or 9? How was he, 10?
Something like that. Probably like 7, 8, or 9, one of those.
When he was taken off. So he has like a little bit of understanding of Earth norms. And so it kind of shows like in the Christmas special, like what they view as like them giving him a present, he views as like, human trafficking. So I think I always thought that was pretty interesting. And so that's why I'd say Star-Lord is my favorite character.
Manny?
James, I wanted to confirm this before I said anything, but James Gunn said, I believe, looking back right now, back in, was this 2013? During San Diego Comic-Con in 2013, he said that Rocket Raccoon was his favorite member of the Guardians of the Galaxy. And that probably could change. We don't know. But I'm going to have to agree with the 2013 version of James Gunn because Rocket Raccoon, or Rocket, now Rocket Raccoon, probably has, if you're taking into the account all 3 films, has probably the best arc, the most complete arc. Because if you look back at the first Guardians, he was kind of a rough and tough, really kind of didn't care about anybody.
Wasn't he like just a bounty hunter?
Yeah, he
Yep.
was just a bounty hunter. He just
Mhm.
kind of was doing his thing with Groot. Only person he cared about was Groot, which, Jordan, I agree with you. I would love to have that flashback, but I'm waiting and hoping maybe we'll get that some other day. I'll let it slide, because what we had here, while I can understand some people saying it was a little too much, there were times where I was like, I can see that, and I will not argue with anyone who feels like it was too much sometimes with animal cruelty. I will, however, say it was so emotionally effective to see this guy who used to be so rough and so kind of I don't want to say one note, but he was kind of, I don't want to say he was the Boba Fett of the first Guardians of the Galaxy, but he was more so than Groot, the gruff center of, Drax had his comedic moments, but Rocket was kind of like sarcastic, like, nope, we're gonna get this stuff done, and I'm gonna enjoy blowing stuff up. And I loved it. In this one, we get a man who genuinely loves his family. He is the way when he, can I say spoilers? Is that fine?
Yeah, this is a spoiler talk.
Okay, wanted to make sure.
Everything's on the table. Everything's on the table.
When he comes back to life or is resuscitated and is sort of saved, when he hugs his family, that is the Rocket that we see. And he became such an endearing character, not only because of his quips, because of the action, because of the multi-layers that he brings, but just the arc that he had is so complete and so loving, because he becomes by the end, he becomes from a bounty hunter from the first Guardians to the leader of the Guardians of the Galaxy, this new iteration of the Guardians. And you can tell James Gunn loves him because he puts him through the ringer, but he comes out stronger, better, more compassionate, more overall, just a better raccoon, really, a better Rocket. And I love what we see him, and Bradley Cooper does amazing. Sean Gunn does great mocap together. It's just a beautiful mixture of CGI, practical effects. I absolutely love Rocket. And of course, Nebula. I just want to give a shout out to Nebula too, who a character that I was kind of thought would be a throwaway from the first Guardians, really becomes the mother figure almost of the entire group, where she kind of is like, all right, boys, let's kind of bring it in here. And I never thought I would say, wow, Nebula has become one of my favorite Guardians, mainly because of her arc from even in the Infinity War, even in the other Avengers films, taking that in consideration. Maybe that's also why I love them, because we had Nebula and Rocket Raccoon for the two people who also were in Avengers, who got to take that and what they learned in those and bring them into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. It's that arc that really stood out for me. And I think specifically for Rocket Raccoon and then Nebula as well too, are some of my favorite Guardians of the Galaxy, if not my favorites. And they were given so many great things to do and to really be fully fleshed out characters that really tugged at the heartstrings and really kind of, Rocket made me cry. So that's always a point for me.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with you, man. My favorite character by the end actually is Nebula. I did not think in the first movie that she would be the character that I would really enjoy by the end. I really like her arc. I think in the overall MCU, Nebula has the best arc, going from villain to hero, because it took so many films to do. I still think, in terms of my favorite MCU film, Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I think the Winter Soldier being presented as a villain who eventually becomes a hero in that film is great, but Nebula's arc is explored so much deeper. Her relationship with Gamora, with her father Thanos, how he tortured her over all these years. If any of you had seen the episodes of What If, what her life could have been like she had she's still blue, of course, but she had beautiful blonde hair, and she was living the high life if Thanos never gave her all those forced upgrades. But yeah, I really like her. I like how motherly to the group she is. I like how she's softer on Peter Quill now. The jokes about her, when he's looking into her eye and she's like, don't look at me like that, cut it, knock it off. That scene had me bawling, and I think she is fantastic in the way that she's basically now, I don't know what kind of title they're going to give her, but she's the leader of nowhere. She's leading that colony with all the aliens and animals and people. It's like a mini arc inside of a dead Celestial's head. And I really hope Karen Gillan comes back and, brings that character to more films. And we'll talk more about if there's going to be a fourth film later. But yes, Nebula, hands down, I think was just very well done throughout this movie. I really liked her, her new arm, which I'm pretty sure was made from the arm that she stole from Bucky in the Christmas special, because she apparently went to Earth, got the Bucky's arm and gave it to Rocket. I'm pretty sure he transformed that vibranium arm into her new can do whatever arm.
You know what's funny? I forgot the special was a thing, so I missed it.
What?
And then now I know I
Yeah,
missed the
same.
special. So I forgot it was a thing because it dropped and I forgot about it. I'm going to watch the special literally after this.
The holiday special is really good. As someone who didn't really care for Guardians 2, when I saw the Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, I was like, James Gunn has got it back. that little break he had from Marvel where he went off to DC and then came back, it was exactly what he needed to get back into the mojo. And that's Jordan, since Mantis in that, she kicks ass. She, when you see her that, you're like, oh wow, she can fight. But yeah, like I said, Nebula is fantastic. Back to you, Jordan. The villain of any movie is pretty much one of the most important parts, maybe even more important than the hero and or heroes. Jordan, tell us your thoughts on the High Evolutionary.
Okay, first of all, most hated villain of all time to me.
Easily.
Second, they dropped the ball on this one, personally. We more or less just get thrusted into believing that the High Evolutionary is super big, bad, evil man. Some places consider him God, right? Cool. But we get no backstory. What is he? Clearly, he's some type of humanoid alien, because he's been around for that long. What is he really? Is he organic? Is he humanoid? Has he done so many? Of course, he's done experimentation on himself because he gave himself telekinetic powers, because clearly he did not have them back when they created Rocket, right? Clearly he has a thing for Earth because he went there and was there for a set amount of time. When was he there? Did he ever cross paths with Nick Fury during that time with Captain Marvel? Were they going to try and find a tie-in? Because he made Counter-Earth in that style of time when you met Captain Marvel, those old school cars and everything like that, like how they were made.
Great point.
Kind of like on some Leave It to Beaver stuff. All right, but what is he, right? Because we don't even really know his true motivation. His motivation was to try and perfect society. And I guess he wanted to eliminate, for all intents and purposes, he wanted to eliminate all types of violence. As you saw from the scene where Rocket figured out why they would evolve and then turn into rabid monsters, right? He had a quest to make a perfect society without any violence, but clearly it sucked at that. He made Adam Warlock's people as well, but we just don't know enough of him. Why is he revered? Because clearly he's not invincible. I mean, Rocket turned his face into God. He looked like the Crypt Keeper, right? So they dropped the ball personally, because I mean, clearly we hate him because of what he did to Rocket, but we don't really have any other reasons to hate him until the end of the movie. So I would like to know more about him as far as the MCU. I mean, I'll just have to go read comics and everything, but most lackluster villain to personally for myself, most hated, but most lackluster. Okay, he's got a God complex. Whoop-de-doo. My mom or parents never loved me, I guess. I don't know. So yeah, they dropped the ball on him for me, backstory-wise.
Daniel?
Yeah, I can kind of see where Jordan's coming from. They didn't really provide a lot of backdrop to him, but I feel like they've done that, unfortunately, with a lot of the Guardians villains. Like with Ronan, you don't get much backdrop with Ronan outside of the fact that, he's like, was he Ronan the Conqueror? And he just goes around and conquers worlds. Is that it?
True, but at least you know his species.
Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, you do know who what.
He's an accuser.
Basically,
like
it's like a cult, right?
A Kree warmonger, basically.
That's right. Yeah, so you get a little background about that. So they've done that with a lot. This is the least fleshed out villain when it comes to like backstory, motivations wise. Yeah, I guess he wants to remove imperfection, but then it leaves I don't know, questions of, once he creates his perfect society, what does he do with the other existing societies? Does he cleanse them? Yeah, it leaves those kind of questions next. Like, what's the next plan? Does he stop being a villain once he creates his perfect society and then stops wiping out ones he created? Because then it's just like, what is your purpose? What is your existence? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I thought he was dislikable, which is needed in a villain. They either need to be likable or dislikable. I guess you just can't be ambivalent to them. So I think they did good with that. Yeah, I guess to me, he was just kind of a villain. He could have easily been another Marvel character, another Marvel villain, I feel like. I mean, they could have easily switched him with the Collector if the Collector hadn't been a villain. I mean, it hadn't appeared earlier in a different form, in different media. So yeah, he was just kind of fit what they needed for this to do for the story, I suppose. That's all he really was to me.
Do you think I feel like he's easily forgettable.
I can see that. Unless we find out that he is, I don't know, deeper ties to the Marvel, to the MCU, and he created, like, I don't know, the scrolls, maybe, who knows? I don't know.
Yeah, right. Like who knows?
That would be cool. Manny?
Something out like that. Yeah, definitely forgotten. It's like that.
Yeah. See, I forgive all that only because Chukwudi Iwuji, who plays, he is so good. I can't. His Shakespearean. He's a Shakespearean actor through and through. The way he chews the scenery keeps me so engaged that I don't disagree. We really don't get a lot. All we get is really from him. James Gunn doesn't care, I think, about the High Evolutionary. The High Evolutionary is a means to get Rocket's backstory. He doesn't really care enough about. I mean, honestly, other than really Ego, the villains and the Guardians have been fine. Ego, obviously, the connection for Star-Lord and all that, and Mantis. But Iwuji does such a wonderful job at just embodying the sheer nastiness. He is a theater actor through and through, you can see. And I was so impressed. And I think that's why I like him more than Ronan the Accuser. That's it, Ronan the Accuser. Because, no offense to Lee Pace was just kind of going there and being raw. Like Iwuji, he like embodied his entire, like he was chewing up this scenery. I keep using that, but it's true. He literally was engaged with his entire face, his body, and I guess the writing portrays him as a pure nasty individual because of his goal to make the perfect person, the perfect world, the perfect people. And the way he goes about doing it, the ends justify the means and all that stuff. I feel like that's a recurring theme we'll see a lot. We see a lot in superhero movies. The ends justify the means, but I digress. I think he really elevated what could have been a really poor character. Not saying he's a great character, but I think he does well enough to make you hate him, to make you stare at him every time he's on screen, because every time he came back on screen I was like, oh boy, what's going to happen next, because he was such a dynamic actor. It's the same way that I think that a good actor can elevate a mediocre character, and the High Evolutionary from just a writing standpoint, mediocre character. We don't get a lot of his backstory. His motivations are there. Like he's a character that is merely there to service the plot of our Guardians forward. That is it. He gets the job done as a villain. But where he succeeds is you get a good actor, good Shakespearean actor like Iwuji, and he just kind of makes it his own. And I'm impressed by what he did, even if I think you're right. The villain in himself is not great, doesn't have really complexities about him, but the actor gave such a committed performance that I am like, yep, I bought it. It worked. You got the job done, and you made me actually get excited when you were on screen. I can't say Lee Pace as Ronan did the same thing, personally, but Kurt Russell did. But he also was a good actor, and he had a great material to work with for Ego. Come on, who didn't want to punch him after he said,
I put that tumor in your mom's head.
Yeah, come on,
that
man.
was dark, but
come on.
Yeah, I think in terms of villain, like he was fine, very serviceable to the plot. I do think Chukwudi Iwuji's performance definitely elevated that character. When, like you said, he was using his whole body. I thought toward the end where he started yelling more, I didn't like that, but I think that was part of Gunn trying to show him becoming more unhinged, because he just really, like, there's certain things about him. When you have the MCU, you have this large universe. I know you don't always want to connect everything, but certain things would make more sense, even if you gave like little slight connection. Like when Rocket ripped his face apart, and I thought to myself, why did he never heal his face? They have all this healing technology. Why would he never heal his face? At first, I thought his face being stretched out, that was part of the surgery he did to give himself like the psychic gravity powers.
Yeah.
But when it turns out it's just a mask, I was like, okay, that doesn't quite make sense to me. The whole aspect of like, he talks about how like, yeah, I visited Earth a while ago and I really liked it, except for like the bigotry and like the hateful people and all that. And I was like, I want to know more about that. Like, when did he visit Earth and all that jazz? And I do think Marvel has gotten away. At least I know they put one in Wakanda Forever. They didn't put one in Quantumania. They didn't do one in this. Like the little stinger at the beginning before the Marvel logo comes. And I think that could have been time that they could have used to give you a small 2-minute scene about the High Evolutionary's backstory. I remember in the first Black Panther, they used that for Killmonger. It was basically his dad and Uncle James were there, and then the King of Wakanda comes, kills his dad. Bam, that sets up why your villain's so angry. So if we had got something maybe with a slightly younger High Evolutionary where something happened in his past, whatever humanoid race he's from, it was instilled in his mind that we need to be perfect. Perfection is what we need. And so that is what set him forth on that path. And then later, you can hate him all you want, but at least you know why he's that way. But I think, like I said, with connections between the MCU, like they said, he created this race, he created that race. A lot of people view him as God. And I'm like, it would have been great if he had a cameo in Thor: Love and Thunder. And that movie has tons of problems. But if this guy is viewed as a god, you could have at least put him in there saying he's going to go after the High Evolutionary next. Something where like he tries to kill the High Evolutionary, but High Evolutionary escapes, and that's your tie to Guardians 3 or something like that. And with Rocket, they could have did that. But I did like, the aspects that he successfully created all these races. Some of them were vanity projects. You find out that he created the Sovereign, which I really enjoy, that they let him be short and they let Elizabeth Debicki be her 6'3" self, and he had to stand on that block to even be eye to eye with her. But I really enjoy that scene. But speaking of the Sovereign, that leads us into our next topic, Adam Warlock. Jordan, as quickly as you can, what are your thoughts on what they did with Adam Warlock?
When I first saw a little trailer, I hated him because it was super goofy, but I understood why. He came out of his tube too early. That means he was technically an adolescent, but he has tremendous power for all intents and purposes. He is the Marvel Universe's Superman. Like, you can hurt him, but you really can't kill him. I mean, he got stabbed right through the spine. For all intents and purposes, he wasn't supposed to be able to move or anything like that. But I do love how he was an empty canvas, so to speak. As you see, he came to them and he was like, all right, well, I guess I'll hug you too. Like, it was, I like how they did him. I think he fits the Guardians of the Galaxy very well. Now they technically have their own quote unquote God, like laser beams out of his hands, can breathe in space. Like, and that kind of pissed me off at the end with the whole finger touch thing. Like, okay, stop being a goofball. We get it. Paintings. Like, he was like, I'm just going to build the suspense. He could have saved Star-Lord a long time ago.
Yeah.
But he was like, and we're off. Like, so I like Adam Warlock after seeing the movie. Before, I was like, why they make him a goober? But now I truly appreciate it. He was finding himself, and I like that he likes animals.
Daniel?
I don't have too much background with Adam Warlock personally, so
he's a badass.
Yeah, I've been kind of looking up stuff on him when I got the questions. Yeah, he seems to have like almost a lot of intricate abilities, but from like just based off the film itself, I mean, yeah, I think having that little explanation of why he was so, I guess, incompetent or just quick to violence before anything else, because he, as you said, came out and was released from his tube too early. I think that did provide like a lot of context for his character. And I mean, he was basically just kind of like the muscle, like a tertiary party who was like meant to like, oh my God, there are like these kinds of people, that they have to deal with sometimes. Like, so I obviously I think he's really kind of introduced here just to play a part in later movies. I think to have a role in later MCU and in the MCU later on. I think that's why they introduced his character. They brought him in.
Manny?
As I mentioned at the beginning, I had said that I think the failure of the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 was having so many characters, so much going on, too many subsidiary plot lines. And I think this is one of them. I think Will Poulter and Elizabeth Debicki are great actors. And I actually enjoyed Adam Warlock's character. I don't know much about him myself either. He's not someone that I've ever kind of followed at all in the comics, but I also haven't read comics in a while. They got really expensive, guys. I just feel like outside of his role at the beginning to really kind of put Rocket in that situation that will serve as a catalyst to get us off of nowhere and into the High Evolutionary's world again, he really doesn't serve a purpose. He kind of just comes in and out until a frame until he saves Peter really in the end. He disrupts them here and there. And I feel like all the time he's there, I'm like, I like this. You didn't need this. Like, I don't feel like James Gunn incorporated him personally. I don't feel like he incorporated him as well as he could have. And I don't know if, because I know they set him up in, I think which one was it? Volume 2, right?
Guardian.
Yeah. They set him up. I remember seeing that there, and I thought he would play a larger role. Maybe he joins the Guardians sooner. Maybe, something like that happens. I know he has to fight against them because he loses his mother, which kind of is a weird death because it's like we get her, and then I think they're going to be more, you think they're going to be more impactful, and then they're really not. They don't serve a purpose for the story really outside of that initial setting up, because you could have easily had rewritten the situation with Star-Lord and had someone else save him at the very end outside of Adam Warlock. And they're setting him up.
It should have been.
It should have been someone else, because I don't feel like I don't have an emotional connection to this guy, and I'm just kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry this happened. Why do I care? And unlike which I think that Iwuji's version, I think Will Poulter does the best he can, or the High Evolutionary, I should say. He serves the purpose as the villain, and he is the catalyst. Excuse me, he is the foil to our Guardians. Will Poulter's Adam Warlock is the foil for the first battle, and then really doesn't do much after that. And that's why I think that you could have incorporated him further. I don't think he was utilized well, and I'm excited for him to come into the future Guardians movies if we have that. But we'll see. I don't think him and the entire Sovereign Nation they felt like an afterthought. That's it. He felt like an afterthought because I'm like, oh yeah, wait, Adam Warlock and the Sovereigns, where did that go? Is it just 2 now all of a sudden? Because it just seems like they're the only ones that are there. So I left me with more questions, and they could have been written out easily and saved for another film. But again, that's my opinion and my 2 cents.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody said. And I think part of the reason he kind of feels like an afterthought and feels underutilized in the comics, Adam Warlock is a very powerful being. He's actually the one who does the snap or the secondary snap in the comics, not Tony Stark, Iron Man. He's that powerful. He doesn't die afterwards because he's Adam Warlock. And they set him up at the end of Guardians 2, I think, because the MCU's always changing. Even if we don't see it on screen, they're putting characters here, figuring out, all right, how can we, get them back? And I think they were trying to line Adam Warlock up to appear in Infinity War and Endgame, and it just didn't work. There's that whole James Gunn situation and all that. And so when you get to Guardians 3, now they're like, oh, we teased this. We kind of got to put him in here somewhere. So yeah, I like I think him being like a simpleton, like a very strong simpleton, worked for this story. And I agree with you, Daniel. I think it's like now we have him, we can have him pop in. I'm pretty sure he's gonna appear in either Avengers Kang Dynasty or Secret Wars, and we will get to see more of him and hopefully a little bit smarter. But like I said, yes, I really enjoyed him. I like how strong he was. That first scene with him pretty much beating the crap out of the Guardians was a very great scene, and the rest of them were kind of like, meh. He could have been incapacitated for the rest of the movie. They could have explained if you they should have put him back in the cocoon, and she should have said, you got him out of the cocoon too early. He has to go back in to heal or whatever. And like at the end of the movie, the Guardians kind of like get the cocoon is theirs. They save the cocoon with the animals. And then, like in a post-credit scene, he pops out and then joins the team or something like that.
They wrote themselves into a corner, basically.
Yeah, they're like, we set it up, we have to use them. It is what it is. But Will Poulter's performance, I thought was fine. He got in great shape for the role. I mean, good for him. I still remember seeing him in what's that movie where they went to Mexico to get the weed?
We're the Millers or not? We're the Millers?
Yeah, We're the Millers. We're the Millers.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the first time I saw him. So he's
wow, he is grown.
Yeah.
I remember him from you remember the third Narnia movie, Voyage of the Dawn Treader? He was
in that. Yeah.
That's how I remember him, man.
Yeah.
It was wild. Amazing what a budget of this Mitch can get someone in shape.
Yeah. But speaking of, Adam Warlock joining the team, at the end of the film, the team has disbanded. You got Mantis, Nebula, Drax, and Quill have left to go off and, rebuild their lives. We got a new team. It's Rocket, Groot, Kraglin, Cosmo, Phyla-Vell, and Adam Warlock. So what do you guys think of, what do you want to see if we get a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4 or whatever they name it? Like, what do you want the team to do next? Any enemies they may face? What are your thoughts?
I guess I got to stay in the MCU because I had a random thought of them meeting like the Lantern Corps, but that would be hilarious. I don't know. I mean, Counter Earth got destroyed. There's nowhere really for them to go. Like, I don't know, man. I really don't know.
You don't? You got any thoughts, Daniel?
I'm gonna be honest with you. I do not think that if they make another Guardians movie, it won't be starring that cast.
You don't think so?
It will not be. I'm just thinking of like what people want to see. People like Drax because he's strong. People like Star-Lord because he has like the gunslinger. He's a gunslinger. It has the tech. People like Gamora because of the blades. They like Nebula because like the cyborg abilities, things like that. Nobody wants to see a telepathic dog. I mean, it's good as a.
Oh, hey now.
It's good as like a one thing, when she slams the freak creature with the rollers. That's cool. Kraglin.
What about Hulk Groot? What about Hulk?
Groot's cool. I mean, but Groot was people like Groot though, but Groot and Rocket. I don't even know who the little girl is, bro. I was like, no,
Yeah.
that can't be Solid. That makes no sense. I'm like, who was that? I don't know who the little girl is. I'm like, where'd she get powers from? Like,
Yeah, I was trying to figure out how she got powers too.
She's from
these kids got powers too. What can't they do? What, they can run for they can run nonstop.
Yeah.
I thought that was the power. They can run for hours without sweating.
Yeah, she's from the comics. Her name is Phyla-Vell. In the movie, it looks like she's one of the kids that the High Evolutionary created.
It did.
Yeah, in the comics, she's half Titan, half Kree. So like half of Thanos' race and half of the Captain Marvel.
Interesting.
Or Ronin race. That's what she is in the comics. They've slightly changed that in the movies. And of course, her being a mixture of those two in the comics makes her ridiculously strong.
But how could she be half Titan? Aren't all the Titans dead?
I'm saying that's from the comics. I mean, he's the High Evolutionary. He probably has every race's DNA.
I guess, yeah. You're right. Yeah, that's true.
Do you have any thoughts, Manning?
That's my thought.
Yes, I do not want them to make a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. And here's why. I at least have some distance between them. James Gunn has already stated he does not want to do them anymore. He is done.
He can't.
Exactly. And at the very end of the day, what does Guardians look like without really James Gunn? Because that was his baby for the longest time. And again, there may be some in the future. We might have an iteration that we'd give them a try. And I'm not saying that other writers and directors can't use them in other stories. They're comic characters, so you can take them from any situation and put them in your story. But I don't know if I want a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. I think it's best to let after that great send-off, keep incorporating the characters into other Marvel films, into crossover events. And like, oh, hey, we need to call the Guardians. Maybe imagine how like a team-up movie, like, again, it said at the very end, the legendary Star-Lord will return. Of course, you're going to have these characters return in some capacity. Unless you're dead in the Marvel universe, you're going to come back in some way, shape, or form eventually until you're too old or you just don't want to show up anymore. Or in the case, obviously, of Chadwick Boseman tragically pass. Those are the only three options. And I want them to return, but I don't want a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. Only because James Gunn's voice was so unique and probably the most distinct, I will say, next to like Coogler, or I'm trying to think of any other directors that really had a singular vision in their movies that they've done. And Coogler's only done 2. If he does a third one, then he'll have completed his vision. But other than that, like even Taika has only done 2, and I've only liked one of them.
Technically 1.5. He technically
1.5. Yeah, 1.5. So
who did the first? Who did Ant-Man?
Peyton Reed. He did 3.
Yeah, he did, but I'm not. 3 feels so. That's another topic for another day. The third one's.
I really just like the first Ant-Man more than anything. That's about it.
Yes, I agree.
Is great. First Ant-Man
is great.
The second one's better when you watch it again. I watched it again. It was better the second time I watched it.
I need to watch it again.
Still great.
Yeah, the third one I did not care for. But this has been so consistently great, and not hearing James Gunn's voice in his writing and his directing for these would be, I think, a tragedy. Well, a tragedy in the sense of like, oh no, we're not going to get it because obviously we're not going to get a movie in his voice. There are other tragedies in the world, but in the sense of the movie sphere, again, I think we'll get the Guardians characters and other mediums, but I think we should let the Guardians of the Galaxy films rest at least for now. I mean, like, please give us like 10 years and maybe 20. Like, for instance, you're going to get Rocket Raccoon. You're going to get Groot. Like Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper are still relatively, well, they're not young, but they'll be here for a while. They can use their voice, There are characters that are going to live on. And, any other characters that want to continue to come back and you want to pull from for other films, go for it. But at the same time, I think we can just let the Guardians have their adventures in the galaxy.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I do want a Guardians 4. I do think it should probably come after Secret Wars. Give it like maybe like 4 to 5 years just to give it a break. I think I really do like what James Gunn did with this trilogy, but that's just that. It's a trilogy. I think you can bring on a new director and kind of remix the team and, have a new voice take these characters somewhere else. Like you have one of my favorite cartoons of all time is Batman Beyond. That's basically older Batman, new Batman. It's the same basic story, but it's like a new voice. And I think if they weren't going to bring the Guardians back, they would not have introduced the new team in that stinger. They would have just left it as Star-Lord going to visit his grandpa. And there are tons, like I want to, like many people, how did Rocket meet Groot? The original Groot. We know he died and he has this, technically his son now, the son of that Groot. So I would like to know more about Groot's race. So we can get a whole movie, not a whole movie about Groot's race, but in the next movie, we can visit whatever Groot's planet is or whatever. I would like to know, like, I just call it Cramp.
Cramp.
Yeah.
You got it, Harrison. You got it. You'll
I got to stand up. But yeah, I would like to know like what missions are they going to go on next? What does Rocket do now that he's free from any thoughts of the high evolutionary? You got Adam Warlock, who in the comics, Adam Warlock, like I mentioned before, super powerful. He has a twin brother in the comics who's Magus. Now, he's basically like Adam Warlock, but super evil. And even in the comics, Adam Warlock wasn't technically like good. But to think there's somebody just as strong as him who's like really bad, I think that would be an interesting thing to do, because you have the Sovereign who have technically, their queen is dead, their god is dead. Technically, Adam Warlock is supposed to lead them now because he's her son. She made him, and he's not there. He's off with this team. So I think there are things that the team can do. They're just space heroes, space bandits. There's tons of space. Galactus is in space. Silver Surfer's in space. So I think once we start to get more cosmic, like with Fantastic Four, Silver Surfer, and all that, we will see them again. But I think it should be after Secret Wars.
Who was the Sovereign's guy? Was it the guy who died in the beginning of Love and Thunder?
No, it was the High Evolutionary. He created them. Remember, he
that's
told her
what you
that.
meant.
He
Oh,
was
sorry.
like,
Yeah,
I'll
right,
destroy
okay.
your planet, which is my right as your maker. So,
All right.
and he said they were a vanity project. Just he wanted people who looked really hot and
Basically,
were simple. And he just left them. That was just one of his projects.
he's a prick.
What I will say about, you said you would love to see about the history. Imagine just a spin-off solo movie about Rocket and Groot. Like something like that I would totally be okay for, because it's not a Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 4. I feel like if you do bring on someone from that, you would need a very distinct, different voice from James Gunn. Someone who won't try to emulate his style and his humor, maybe don't have the needle drops, something that makes it feel unique and different. And I think a Rocket and Groot buddy team would be great. I'd be down to watch that.
I think that would come as they do these special presentations now, those little hour thing. I think Rocket and Groot would make a great special presentation.
I agree.
Maybe the High Evolutionary visits Earth. That would be a great special presentation, something like that. Are there any other topics you guys want to talk about the movie? What you like, what you hated, anything?
I'd say personally, I would like to know exactly what was wrong with the High Evolutionary. Because remember the scene where he was manic looking for a rocket, and they said he needed to go back and continue his treatments.
Yeah.
So I want to know exactly what was wrong with him, because he was always unhinged.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, he was always unhinged, and those same two people who were his caretakers were the same two people that were around the whole time. So I want to know if there's something above the High Evolutionary, because if he's so perfect, why did he need to get treatments? There's somebody else behind it, and they left him there as watchers, for more or less like babysitter caretakers. So there was something off about him, and I want to know what.
That could explain why he was like yelling a lot more at the end, Harrison. Because you want to. I mean, I just assumed it was because he was someone who valued like perfection, and obviously thought he had like the typical villain who, when they think all their plans are succinct and perfect, and they can't be outsmarted. But when things start going opposite to people who they view as less than them, they start becoming more erratic. I just assumed it was something like that, but it could be like Jordan said. Maybe the other gentleman who had got like used as a boogie board through the on
that was funny. Yeah,
maybe maybe with him dying, he wasn't able to get like a certain amount of his treatment or something, so he became more erratic, like he was in the beginning of the movie or in the flashbacks.
Yeah,
and
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Harrison. No, please go ahead.
I was gonna say, I want to know
adjacent what I'm gonna talk about.
Who owns Orgo Corp now? He was the CEO. He owned all those patents. I want to know, like, so who takes over that company now? That would be a great thing to kind of like sprinkle in the MCU in the future. And also, lovely cameo, Jennifer Holland, James Gunn's wife. Hilarious, but she got shot in the leg.
That was her.
That was great.
That was her?
Yeah, that
was funny. We do not condone shooting in the legs, but it was a funny scene.
It was hilarious.
And yeah, all those questions you're posing, I think, stem from the fact is that the problem with the Guardians, and it's not a problem, but it is more like the Guardians feel, outside of the Avengers films, the Guardians of the Galaxy really feel almost separate from what is happening in the other Marvel films, and which is both their strength and their weakness, depending on how you look at it. It's a strength because they are standalone stories. I literally have encouraged people who don't watch the MCU movies, hey, check out the Guardians. Just check out the 3 trilogies. You could, outside of the third one and some questions, you could, like, I haven't seen the special. And I feel like I could easily like pick it up after all 3 films. Now, the Avengers films, you might have some questions about Gamora and what happened to Thanos. But I think if you're just looking at the heart of who these characters are, you could technically just watch these 3. It'd be confusing, but you could. I think the problem is that James Gunn really wrote these characters almost away from the main story. He was like, yeah, this is the main story, but this is what I really want to tell, these core characters. And all these questions that we do have and that we're posing, it comes down to the fact of like, oh, what is this happening and how does it extend to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe? When it's like, if this was separate by themselves, would we still have these questions? Would these all still be little things here and there? Actually, if there's someone higher than the evolutionaries you were saying, Jordan, if there's a higher evolutionary.
Celestials.
Yeah, exactly. Well, no, we know they exist. Although,
Yeah.
I don't know, they existed in Eternals. We don't know what happens now after that. But yeah, it's kind of like stuff like that of like, is there someone higher than him? Maybe that'll be in the next Marvel film, but those questions pose because it's still a Marvel Cinematic Universe. But if it wasn't, and we're just looking at these 3, that is what I think is what really makes these shine a lot, is because they do feel really separate. They just so happen to be Marvel movies, and James Gunn really kind of, I feel like, fought Marvel to be like, I still want to keep these a little bit separate. But of course, Kevin Feige and the Marvel machine, it's like, okay, we do get that, but we still got to connect this to this comic book world that we have created with these movies. So it's like push and pull that I've noticed, because we wouldn't have these questions as much as I feel like as if it was a separate film, but it's not. It's Marvel, and it doesn't hurt the film. It's just kind of an observation that I've had as I've watched these and watched the discourse, because I'm kind of losing faith in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since Avengers Endgame, really, personally. So that's just me. But I just think that's interesting because this one felt so separate from everything else going on that we've had. And I'm curious to see how they're going to move forward. But again, that's my rumination. So take that with what you will.
Well, we'll see what they do, how they pull it off. I think it would have been interesting to see if James Gunn was never fired, because this was supposed to be the first phase 4 film, and Thor was going to be like in at least like a small percentage of this movie originally. But when he got fired and rehired, and Thor: Love and Thunder came out first, they kind of put that story over there. And I think Gunn would have handled Thor better personally. But yeah, we have all these questions. It'll be great to see where the MCU, if they can pull it out. But that is basically the end. That's all the topics I had. I'd like to thank you guys for joining me here today on another episode of Let's Talk Spoilers. Remember, you can read my full review for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 on my website, flipfrogllc.com/flixfrog. Remember, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Reddit. Jordan Woods, tell the people where they can find you.
You can find me on Instagram. Gonna plug my food blog, Food is Bay. That's B as in Bravo, A as in Apple, E as in Echo, CLT. I like to eat. I like to eat good, but I like to eat good for cheap. You can follow me there. But besides that, I'm just a regular degular guy. If you find my Twitter, may the gods be with you.
Daniel?
Yeah, also I'm on Instagram. Nothing official, just like, usual IG stuff. Kid Chocolate, KI_D_chocolate. Yes. I'm also I'm on Twitter, but I'm not on Twitter, like most people are, you're on Twitter, but not on Twitter. So, yeah. But yeah. And of course, you can catch me at your local high school, East Mac. I'll be there, slowly fading away.
And Manning.
You can find me reviewing movies on WFMY News 2, CBS affiliate in Greensboro, North Carolina. And yeah, that's every Thursdays, or on both YouTube live streaming during that time. So check us on our YouTube channel, WFMY News 2. And find me on Instagram at, it's going to be very simple. Ready, guys? At Manning Franks. Wow. I need to do something. It feels so generic. But yeah, find me there on Instagram at Manning Franks, as well as Twitter at Cine_man. That is CINE_MANN. See, a little clever. But yes, thank you for having me on, and I appreciate it, and I'm excited to be back in the future.
Awesome. My next Let's Talk Spoilers is probably going to be, not probably, I'm pretty sure it's going to be Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse.
I already called it.
Next big one out. you want to come to the screening?
We'll
see. We'll see if I can get that out, and I think it's probably going to be Flash after that. But yeah, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse will be next, and until next time, I'll be seeing you.